Parker with Navit, and I am beyond excited to be talking to two-time Olympic gold medalist and U.S. water polo team captain, Maggie Steffens. Maggie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your training for Tokyo to speak with me.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. To start, I would just love to get a sense of your story and your journey into water polo. How did you get into water polo, etc.?
Yeah, so I come from a pretty big family. That's like the basis of all of my storylines. Always comes back to family. My dad is from Puerto Rico and my mom is from Northern California, the Bay Area, and they met at Cal Berkeley. My dad was playing water polo there. He played water polo in Puerto Rico. And then my mom is one of 13 and all of her brothers played water polo at Cal. So you can kind of see how the aquatic part of my family started. And then through there, I have three older siblings and all of them played water polo. My oldest sister was actually a 2008 Olympian and I got to watch her and cheer her on in 2008 as a fangirl. And then the next Olympics, we actually got to be teammates. So pretty spectacular. I definitely followed in my siblings' footsteps. Jess, my oldest, who went to the Olympics, also went to Stanford, which is where I went. And then my two middle siblings went to Cal to play water polo. So we have a split family in that regard, but all of us did water polo and I got to play with my other sister in high school. So kind of is a family affair for sure. I did all the sports in the book, gymnastics, swimming, basketball, soccer, dance, but water polo was kind of more my calling. At least I think so. It worked out pretty well for me so far. And yeah, I'm still going. So that's kind of how it infiltrated my family and has continued to be a part of my life.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And what's it been like now as you look towards Tokyo? Like, what does your day-to-day look like as an athlete, especially as we approach?
Yeah, so day-to-day has been kind of the same for a long period of time, especially with COVID and quarantine. And then in the last like 4 or 5 months, we've actually been able to play games. And so we backloaded a lot of our game experience in these last few months, which normally we wouldn't do because we would be doing that for 1.5 years straight. But our normal day-to-day looks like this: wake up around 6 a.m., maybe a little earlier, and have breakfast, a coffee, whatever you need, and then head to practice for 7 a.m. So we have 7 a.m. lift, strength training in the gym for about 1.5 to 2 hours. And then we're in the water again for 2 hours for conditioning work, fundamental skills. So that's 7 to 10:30 in the morning training. And then we have a 3-hour break, more or less. And that looks like, recovery, getting treatment if you need for injuries or, just to get your body on straight. Some girls nap. I used to nap all the time, but now I just have too much stuff to do. And then come back to the pool and be ready to practice from 1:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. So about 6 hours or 6.5 hours a day of full-time training. And then I'm in bed like a grandma around 8, usually come home, cook, and use that as a rewind, and get ready and get my body set, get my mind set for the next day. So that's kind of what our day looks like. And that's 5 times a week. And then our 6th day on Saturday is just one practice.
Nice. Yeah. And you kind of touched already on where I was going to go next, but like, what does the mental and emotional training look like? Like you talked about the day-to-day physically, but like, you talked about cooking and like, are there other things you can do to kind of de-stress and
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely as you get closer to the Olympics, the anxiety and stress is going to keep building because you're getting closer and closer and closer. And so I think having a routine is really important, and being able to do things to unwind. Like I mentioned, whether it's cooking or I like to journal. Journaling just like helps me get my thoughts out and not live so in my head and kind of let it out. I live with my boyfriend, and so it's nice to have my partner here with me, and I can, go on walks with him or even just kind of step away from the water polo world for a second. But the thing is at this point in the journey, you don't really have much time to step away from it. You kind of want to be thinking about it all the time and be living it at all times. It's more just, what can I do to make sure I'm keeping my stress levels low so that I can recover and be ready to give my full self for the next day. You know, and I think that's more where it lands. So definitely using that, and my teammates are a huge resource for that. So I'm really fortunate that, you know, my teammates aren't just people I play with, they're my friends, they're my family. And so if, you know, I'm struggling, I can always reach out to them. I can call them. If I need to go on a date with somebody and just like have that teammate by my side and know that I'm not alone. Those are really, really important. So I'm really lucky to be part of a team sport and not an individual sport. I don't know if I could have lasted quarantine and the postponement alone. And so that's definitely a way for me to, you know, get through tough times or even good times, right? Like whatever emotions you have, it's nice to share them. And so definitely using my teammates as a resource there for sure.
Yeah, that makes total sense, especially as you talk about like approaching, I loved how you described it as a world, right? And like approaching those teammates as part of that world. My next thing, which you probably saw this coming, was like, how do you think finances play a role in this picture? And when we talk about like checking in and mindset and all of that, do you think those are tangentially related to like money or separate things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of overlaps there. One, I talked about stress and anxiety, right? And I think as you're heading into the Olympic Games, even heading into a tournament, and this is actually, today is one of my off days. And so today is all about getting everything in order so that by the time I go to the Olympics, I'm not stressed about anything else, right? Even if it's like the littlest thing, like making sure my house is clean, you know, or making sure that when I come back, like things are in order so that once I'm there, and even for my last week of training, I can really just focus on our mission, our dream, my fundamentals, my fitness, my training, our teamwork, right? So when it comes to finances, that plays a huge part in that, because there's a lot of stress and anxiety that comes from finances. And I think for me, one of the big things is, especially like it's more aware now heading into the Olympics, because this is kind of my process, but this is how it's been for the past 2 years, right? You want to be able as an athlete to focus on what you need to do. You need to play well. You need to train well. You mentally need to be prepared. You need to be a good teammate. You need to be a good listener, whatever it is. And if you're stressed about your finances or don't have things in order, or are like trying to figure something out that you need to do for your mortgage or your rent or whatever it is, you're not able to focus on those things. And so for me, I definitely see an overlap, because the more that I can feel mindset wise at ease with my finances and kind of feel a bit in control of my finances, the more I can focus on what I'm actually doing, like what is my actual job. Whereas the finances kind of supplement that, of course. And, you know, if I can have a good support system with my finances, that makes me feel a bit more at ease. But for me, that's kind of how I look at it, right? Like the more I can have control over that and really understand it and feel at peace and at ease in terms of a mindset, and also kind of feel proud of what I'm doing with my money, the more I can just focus on what I really want to focus on, which is playing water polo, being a good teammate, getting better and improving. So for me, it's definitely an overlap there.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I guess my next question would be like, to what extent are the coping mechanisms you use to deal with stress, or just even like checking in and your teammates, like to what extent does like that kind of strategy that you've cultivated apply also when you go to manage things like financial stress, or like everything you just talked about, how it kind of can creep in?
Yeah, for sure. So I talked about how my teammates are a huge resource for me to cope with happiness, sadness, anger, whatever those emotions are. And I'm really fortunate for that. And so I think even with Navit or just being able to check in on my finances, it's really similar, right? If you have the ability to, like, I like the word check in too, check in on how you're doing financially, and kind of just like I would with my friends, be able to say or think about, okay, what is the problem here, or what is the good thing here? And I just want to make sure we're good, right? And that's the same thing with finances. Can I check on how I'm doing, whether it's my budget, whether it's my savings, whether it's my investments? How am I doing? Can I check in on that? Whether good or bad, at least I know the information, and from there I can move forward. Whether if it's good, then that kind of helps with the coping mechanism too, of like, all right, now I can be stress-free a little bit. I'm doing well, and I can move forward and not be stressed about something else when I really just want to be focused on this Olympic journey. Or if it's bad, then I know right away. I can say, all right, you know what? I need to be better here. These are the steps I need to take, especially as athletes. It's like, here's the problem. Cool. Great. We don't care. What are the steps I can do to make it better? And then from there, being able to move forward.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How do you think that Navit has helped in that process? Like, you talked about the check-ins a little bit as like but there are other features too, right? Like whether it's the community or just like thinking about your identity in terms of how you spend your money.
Definitely. I think there are a few things. One, like I mentioned, or we've been talking about, the check-in, I think it's really important. I think it's kind of the same, right? As an athlete, it's nice to be able to see your progress and see how you're doing, whether it's talking to your coach or talking to your teammates, whether it's, you score a goal or you get a block. Those are tangible things. And with money, sometimes that's difficult to have those. And so with Navit, I feel like I can kind of see when I score a goal or get a shot block or earn an ejection in terms of my finances. And that can give me confidence with what I'm doing. So I think with that check-in, that for me is really nice, especially as an athlete. I would also say it's nice to have my different expenses and different incomes on one platform. So I'm not like checking 4 or 5 different things, or credit cards, or whatever it is, accounts that normally, I separate my own way, but it's kind of nice to be able to see the big picture. I think that's something else as an athlete, and especially as an Olympic athlete, we're constantly thinking of the bigger picture and then the little steps to make those happen. And so I really enjoy kind of that outlook that Nav.it provides. And then third, I would say, you mentioned community, but I would say for me, knowing also that it's an all women company, or built all women and for women, is really encouraging and really inspiring, especially for me. I'm definitely about women empowerment and being able to, take control of your life in a way. And, I live with my boyfriend. We own a home together, and I'm really grateful that we've been able to, in the past year and a half, figure out how to buy a home together. That was a really incredible step. But to know that, like, this is my home, we share it, him and I, but I was a part of that. And to know that I have my own company, and I also am a co-founder with Tony Azevedo, but to know that that's also my company, and I put my own money into that, and to see how well Navit is doing, especially like for women, and to empower somebody like me to say, all right, I've always wanted to invest in a home, or I've wanted to create my own company. Let me check in on my finances and see if this is possible. And now I'm going to go do it. And I was a part of Navit when those happened. So I think too, for that's a really cool thing for me to kind of look back on.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Pivoting a little bit, like we were talking about, like inclusion in a digital space, or even as you talk about like owning a home or being an entrepreneur and what that looks like. What do you think the role is in water polo, or even especially as a team sport, of inclusion? Yeah. And how do you take steps to prioritize it? Are there any steps you still hope are being taken in the sport or on the team to make it more inclusive?
of inclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially for water polo, there's a lot of steps that need to happen and are happening. So we're fortunate to have people in the water polo world who have created task forces to try to help the sport and make it more open, more welcoming, more opportunity, more equal. And that task force is the Diversity and Equity Task Force for water polo and inclusion, as well. And I think that was a huge step because one, it identified that there is a huge problem there. And I think for most people, they probably don't know the history of aquatics when it comes to the people who are in swimming pools a lot. And, you know, there's a lot of history there. There wasn't as much opportunity when it comes to people of color. And especially for nowadays as well, you see it have carried on with how expensive it is to just be a part of a pool program, whether it's your neighborhood pool, whether it's a club. People of color weren't even allowed in pools. So the fact that when you're probably just looking to try to get in a pool and have fun and people are staring at you or don't even invite you into the water area or kick you out and do much worse things to you, that's going to trickle down culturally as well. And so for us, I think it was really important to have that acknowledgement of that history and realize that we really need to step up and make some changes. And the first thing is kind of knowing your past so that it doesn't repeat itself, which unfortunately I think is naturally going to happen in some places. But I do hope and I do believe that water polo is becoming a more open sport and more opportunity is being provided to not just affluent areas or not just, white people in areas that the sport is popular. Right. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of that weight is carried by, Ashley Johnson or Janae Kerr or Brenda Villa, people who have kind of been and are in the spotlight of our sport and are a black woman or is a Latina woman. I can resonate with the Latina side for sure. But I still am, I still was very fortunate growing up in Danville, California, So I think there's a lot of opportunity for more inclusion, and that's really, really important to us. But I think the first thing is for anybody who doesn't understand the past of aquatic, not just water polo, but just aquatics, it's important to just kind of brush up on your history and realize that there's more to it than just living in like a rich area with a pool and who lives in that area. It's not just that, right? There was much more before that, and why, there's not as many people of color who are comfortable being around a pool, So I think for sure that's something that water polo is focused on. I'm really grateful for the task force for that. And then as well for me, I think the more that I can be around kids and show them that you don't have to be, even start simple, like you don't have to be from California or you don't have to look the same as everybody else, right? Like water is an equalizer. It doesn't matter your body type, doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter what your hair looks like. Water is an equalizer. As long as you can get in the pool, which is probably step one for a lot of people, that's fine. As long as you can get in the pool, you can be whoever you want to be. And if you look at our women's team, you're going to see extremely different body types and you're going to see different backgrounds, different cultures. And do I hope that gets even wider and even more inclusive in the future? Definitely. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But that's definitely something that is important to me and to our team and to our sport.
Yeah. That's a great answer. This is pivoting more towards like on the national and as we think about like the Olympics as a whole. Mm-hmm. I know the Even Playing Field Act was just reintroduced, and there was one which would help guarantee equal pay. Specifically, I think they're focusing on gender. But what you thought about, if you have thoughts on that, and if not, no worries.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit.
No
the what?
The Even Playing Field Act was just reintroduced, which would do the equal pay and equal working conditions for men and women who are Olympians and Olympic athletes. I was wondering if you had thoughts on that, and if not, no worries.
Yeah. Sorry. Can you hear that like motorcycle outside?
You're good.
No. Okay. It's like so loud. Yeah. I just had our team just had a really cool moment recently with FINA, which falls really under the same act. And it's been a long time coming, but we just finished a tournament called World Super Final. And it was the first year after, I've been captain since last quad, and every year after each summer, after each tournament, we can voice things that we want them to improve on, or what we need more from FINA, etc. And one thing that I'm always very loud about is equal pay when it comes to prize money, and just equal opportunity and equal exposure when it comes to the women's games. Men's water polo is pretty popular when it comes to certain countries, and it is a lot older. It's been around in the Olympics since 1900, and women's water polo hasn't been in the Olympics since 2000. So 100 years later, women finally got to play the same sport. And so, although that was a very unfortunate circumstance, I understand that women's water polo has not been around internationally as long in terms of the Olympic, movement. But at this point, I'm like, let's get equal, and it was really cool. This past tournament was the first time that the women side of the tournament got the same amount of prize money as the men. And each year it kind of got like a little bit better, but this is the first year that we were completely equal. And that just made my heart so full, because it was really cool to kind of see all that, conversations and all of that fight actually come through, and actually be able to hold the check and see this is exactly the same as the men's side is going to hold. And at the same time, I had an alumni, I posted about it on Instagram, and I had an alumni message me and say, "What, you guys make money now?" And I think for me, that kind of brought it full circle, because that means that we're really pushing the sport forward for women. If, an alumni for women's water polo, and actually it was my coach growing up, she went to the Olympics as well and did not receive prize money for these FINA tournaments she went to. And now we're like fighting for equal pay, right? So it kind of gives you this sense of even greater gratitude of, wow, like, look at this perspective. She was fighting for us to just be able to have these opportunities. Now, not only do we have these opportunities, but we're making money off of them. So for me, it kind of made me think about, well, what might people say in 16 years? And let's make sure that it's even better and even more positive. And hopefully I'm like reading somebody's post and being like, what? That's happening now? We never got that. And that's what I want, right? We want to propel women forward and give them more opportunity in the future. And the more steps we can do now will help that. So when it comes to this act, I think it helps with providing the opportunities for women and helping them see, and us see, okay, we can receive equal pay or equal resources. And then it shows the future of, now you can take it a step further, right? It's not going to go from here to here. I think those little steps and being able to see that is really important.
Yeah, that's a great point. My last question for you today is simply your favorite thing about Navit. So I know we touched on it earlier, but bring it back.
Yeah, I kind of said it earlier, to be honest, but maybe I'm just thinking about this, but I really love how Nav.it empowers women and allows women to have the resources to empower themselves. So it's not just somebody doing it for you. It's giving you the tools and the resources for you yourself to figure out what you need financially and a money mindset, you know? And I think that's really important to empower women in that way, not necessarily having somebody or someone else just do it for you, but giving me the confidence and giving me the pride in knowing that, all right, I know what I'm doing here and I did it, you know? And that for an athlete is what's really fun. And that's why you keep growing and keep learning, is so that you can kind of have that intrinsic motivation and you get to share it with your teammates. And I think that's probably my favorite part about Navit, is kind of feels a bit more like a sport in that way, is that you earn it. You got to figure it out. You got to learn to use these tools and resources for what you personally want, your personal goals, your personal dreams, whatever they may be, and you get to take control of it. And I think there's more meaning to that, and it's more empowering in that way. So I think that's probably the coolest part for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Maggie, thank you so much for taking the time out of your training and out of your day to talk to me. I really enjoyed getting to learn more about your journey, and we are just beyond excited to have you as part of our team of navigators, and are wishing you the best of luck in Tokyo. So
thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes.
Bye.